When it comes to making you doubt your own abilities, there is nothing quite like a difficult platformer. The best ones feature devilish level design, tight controls, and a learning curve that sucks you in until you can't help but keep trying to conquer the game. The bad ones are hard because of confusing design choices, slippery controls, and challenges that rely more on luck than skill. So, where does Ex-Mutants sit? Squarely in the latter. Ex-Mutants was a comic book property that had gone through some turbulent times. Initially published by Eternity Comics in 1986, it bounced around through various production houses, until finally landing with Malibu Comics in 1992. It's the Malibu version of the franchise that the Mega Drive game is based on. Before you even get into the game, there's already one major problem. The game is based on a comic book, which is inherently a visual medium. Why on earth, then, is there so much text? Even if you skip the novel before the title screen, you're still presented with a mountain of text before you even start the first level. Most of it is skippable, sure, but why is it even there in the first place? If the flavour of the game was so important, why couldn't they present it in a more interesting way? Compare it to the introduction to Maximum Carnage on the same system, and the difference is obvious. You have a choice of two characters, Ackroyd the axe wielder, and Shannon the nunchucker.
Oh, a fellow chucker, eh?
The differences are pretty basic. Ackroyd is slower but more powerful, whereas Shannon is a bit quicker but not as strong. The gameplay is similarly fairly basic. Explore the levels, find the power cells for Professor Kildare, and try to take as many of the enemies out as possible along the way. The game is fairly slow-paced, with stages that span vertically and horizontally. The game looks okay. It's fairly inconsistent though. Some of the environments look great, like the sparkling rocks and lava in the cavern. However, the animation in particular leaves a lot to be desired, with some sprites seemingly having less frames than characters in an 8-bit title. Likewise, the sound is fine, but completely forgettable. There are a few decent digitized voices here and there.
You're going down.
But you definitely won't be humming along to the music anytime soon. The frustration mostly comes from three key game design choices. The first is that many enemies are extremely strong and require several hits to take down, even if you're playing as the powerful Ackroyd. Bosses are obviously tough to kill, but even your garden variety monsters often take a beating before going down. To make things even tougher, there are often enemies and obstacles in the environments, and it isn't initially clear whether they can be destroyed or not. The second major issue is that there's virtually no recovery time after getting hit. Forget about invincibility frames. If you fall into a pit or get caught by an enemy up close, it'll often feel like a one-hit kill. Finally, some of the level design is extremely awkward and relies more on trial and error than reflexes and skill. You're often asked to make blind jumps and climb into areas where you can't see the enemies until you've already committed. Here's a section near the start of the game that's a great example of how all these issues combine to create an incredibly frustrating experience. Take a look at this setup. You have to jump across a pit of spikes, with small platforms and other hazards just out of sight until you've committed to the jump. These platforms also spin when you stand on them, but that's not immediately obvious until you land on one. The next set of platforms move in and out to a rhythm, but you can't really time it because you've already moved past any safe ground, so you're forced to just keep attempting the section until you happen to be on the right pattern. You also have to try and dodge the buzzsaw, which turns out is impervious to your attacks. Finally, if you mess up at all, you'll fall into the spike pit, which is likely going to be an instant death due to the way the invincibility frames on hit work. To me, this one section shows off a lot of what makes the game a chore to play. Look, Ex-Mutants isn't a terrible game. The platforming is functional, and the presentation's about average. The problem is, there are lots and lots and lots of incredible platformers on the Mega Drive, so there simply wasn't space for ones that were just okay. Unfortunately, Ex-Mutants just doesn't bring enough to the table to stand out from the pack.